Hey, Sally.
Hey,
I
Jess.
think if we could chat through some of the things that came up at our CEM state leadership team and some of the things we're going to be working on. Would you be up for some questions?
Let's do it.
All right. So the first one that we chatted about was how are teams going to implement CEM, especially if we're teaching virtually or if their classrooms look different, hybrid models. What is that going to look like?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And it's the question we've been considering at Minco and as the team really since March, and trying to find a balance of knowing that children and families still need our support. They still need evidence-based practices. It looks really different. And so what I would encourage teams to talk about with their PDF, to think about in their implementation team, is what do our children and families need around engagement right now? The guidance we sent out from the state was intentionally left as flexible as we could. We know some programs will be in person for some or all of the year, and we wanted you to have the option to use the engagement practices to the best of your ability in a way that makes sense without the pressure of needing to complete a CEM checklist. If you haven't read the guidance yet, please know CEM checklists are optional this year. You don't have to do them. In fact, if you're teaching virtually, you can't do a CEM checklist. All those practices are based on being in a classroom. So however you move forward this year, whether it's in person or distance or virtual, we can think about what can we do to support children with engagement and learning, even if it's in a very different way, and then pick up the classroom engagement model next year when things are a little bit more close to back to normal.
Thank you. One thing we're also wondering about is what might it look like with props and visuals, both in the classroom and virtual, and how might teachers think about that?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. These are things that the CEM trainers and I are working through some examples of how can we continue safety practices and also try to engage children when we've been told classrooms need to be minimalistic and taking out soft materials and reducing the number of things that children share. And so our plan is to continue to provide guidance, to continue to send out short video snippets and handouts. We're working through things, but I can tell you right now, some of the things we're brainstorming include, can each child have their own prop bag that stays with them when they come to circle time, and they reach in and find the prop that matches the activity you're doing to reduce the number of children touching things. And that might mean that you'll be more reliant on cutting out a paper prop and either laminating it or throwing it away afterwards. You know, teachers are always innovating and always creative. So I have the utmost faith in the CEM trainer group, as well as every teacher, coach, practitioner, thinking about the practice, knowing what evidence says about kids, and then brainstorming together, how can we adapt it?
So that also makes us wonder about not only the props and materials, but friendship skills. Like what might that look like as we're trying to teach these important skills and we're wearing masks?
Yeah, I think that's the million-dollar question for all of us is how is this going to work from a social emotional perspective? And again, we're going to look at how can we be creative? What are the social distance greetings that we can come up with? And what are the games that we can play 6 feet apart? Maybe we have parallel sets of materials and kids are interacting back and forth with that 6 feet apart. I also want to just remind everyone that we can take a little pressure off, and we can just know that because it's not a typical year, we're not going to get through as much. We're not going to be able to do as many of the things that we would do in a regular year, and that's okay. Let's look at the really important practices and figure out how much of that can we do in a reasonable way that feels supportive to kids and families, but isn't over the top or stressful. And we're really going to meet kids and families where they are and meet ourselves where we are.
Yeah, and my hunch is that a lot of our practitioners in the state implementing CEM are wondering about the STAIR and what that's going to look like and how that may or may not fit in. Could you share some thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, just like the CEM checklist, it's optional, so is the stare. And we really can only do the stare if we're in person. It would be so tough to do that in a virtual setting as you're trying to, if you're leading a Zoom small group or a Zoom classroom, unless you're able to have an additional staff member with you to do some of that data collection, it might just be so hard. So please take the pressure off. If the stare feels helpful to you to tune in on how is engagement going during this time, then please complete it. Otherwise, for the entire 2020-2021 school year, it's optional. And you may just pick it up again next school year.
Great. Another question that we've been wondering about on the state team is kids have been home for a really long time. And when they potentially come back to school, hybrid or full-time, there might be some separation anxiety that's occurring, or maybe parents aren't allowed in the building because they're limiting the number of people that come in. So kind of how might that fit in with some guidance we could give or support people with that?
Yeah, it's a really important question. Kids have had a really long break from being at school, and maybe some children will be new to the school experience and coming back in a really different way. So a couple things we're working on. We are accessing information from the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovation. That would be the pyramid model social emotional team at the national level. They've come up with some really great social stories, some nice handouts, and we'll be adding those to our newsletter and making sure that classroom engagement model teams have access, because embedding social emotional skills into routines and thinking about really consistent, predictable routines is a big part of our work. So we will definitely be sure that our CEM teams have access to those materials. We also know that some programs are thinking about doing what we're doing right now, recording a little virtual welcome to the classroom and sending it out to families in advance so that children can see the classroom, parents can see what their child's classroom will look like. Maybe there are some other ways you can reach out and find virtual connections. We know that routines and relationships will be a high priority in September and October, and we'll continue to think about how to support you with that. And we are excited to hear the ideas that our classroom engagement model teams come up with as you think about the evidence-based practice and what can it look like in this really different year.
Awesome. That's some great guidance. As people are getting back into their school year, if they have additional questions or are creating resources they think might be helpful for others within the state, what would be some next steps for teams and practitioners?
Yeah, so our CEM SIT team is always thinking about supporting you. And so please go to the CEM Share site and drop us a question, email me, ask your PDF, send an email to her, and we will continuously be working on this together. This is a really strange year and we don't have all the answers yet, but we are here to work through it together. And our priority is to support you and to support your efforts for the children and families in your program. We want to take as much of the pressure and the stress off and help you really think about what do your children and families need during this very different year. And we'll pick up wherever we need to in 2021, and we'll make sure you have the resources and support you need at that time as well.
Great. Thanks so much, Sally. That was very helpful to hear some insights into those questions that are popping up.
Yeah, I'm so glad we could do this together, Jess. I know that there are a lot of questions out there and we're here to help. So thanks so much, and everybody take care and good luck with the beginning of the school year.
Thank you.